Hi everyone. Welcome to a new year and another installment of Terrifying Trios. Winter has, for the time being, engulfed much of the northern hemisphere in its chilly grasp, so this time our theme is cold. This month's movies and book take place in some of the coldest locales on Earth, and even if you survive the freezing weather, there are other dangers to avoid. Content warning. The following movies and book contain graphic violence, including murder, discussions of suicide, body horror, an alien that can disguise itself as other creatures, explosions, dog death, death by fire, blood, and the drinking thereof by a vampire, grave robbing, bringing formerly dead tissue to life through electricity, and more. Viewer and reader discretion is advised, and keep in mind, spoilers ahead. Our first movie this month is John Carpenter's The Thing. This 1982 film is a reimagining of the 1951 film The Thing from Another World, part of which you can see the child playing Lindsay watching on TV in John Carpenter's Halloween. The story begins in Antarctica. The crew of an American research station watch curiously as men in a Norwegian helicopter, who don't speak English, pursue and attempt to shoot a dog. The dog makes it to the American base, and the helicopter explodes, killing the passenger, while the pilot runs toward the Americans, shouting frantically and brandishing a rifle. Gary, the commander of the station, shoots him. MacReady, the American helicopter pilot, played by Kurt Russell, and Dr. Copper fly to the Norwegian base to try and figure out what's happened. When they arrive, the base has been burned, and the two Americans find several bodies in the snow. One corpse is visibly different than the others. Its strange but mostly humanoid shape prompts the two to bring it back to their base, where the biologist, Blair, confirms that, in spite of how it looks, this body has human organs. But of course the question remains, why does it look so strange and almost inhuman? Meanwhile, the dog that fled the helicopter is put into the kennel with the American base's other sled dogs. To quote the Thing.fandom wiki, the Norwegian dog was played by a half-dog, half-wolf hybrid named Jet. He acted all his parts eerily well and was extremely quiet and well-behaved on the set. The creature, which is not in fact a dog, absorbs several of the frightened canines, which alerts the humans on base to the fact that something isn't right. A flamethrower, which, fine, I guess you might need sometimes in Antarctica to thaw especially thick ice and snow, is used to kill the not dog. And an autopsy reveals that whatever this organism is, it can alter its appearance to look like any living thing. Based on the information they gathered at the Norwegian base, the Americans now know that the dead researchers discovered an alien spacecraft buried in Antarctica for over 100,000 years. Blair, the biologist, is especially concerned because based on the ability of the dog creature and how quickly it was able to assimilate the dogs, it's clear that just one creature of this kind could assimilate all living things on Earth in only a few years. Of course, as these conclusions are drawn, the Americans have another problem: the human-like corpse they retrieved from the Norwegian base. It isn't really dead, but it's caught in the act of trying to assimilate someone, and MacReady burns it. But then Blair the biologist is discovered having killed the sled dogs that are left, sabotaged the base's vehicles, and wrecked the radio, making escape impossible. Blair is confined to a tool shed, and though the men on base have uncontaminated blood samples in storage, which could be used to test against the Thing's blood, Dr. Copper finds the samples gone, and MacReady assumes command of the base now that the others have ceased to trust Gary. The discovery of a burnt corpse leads MacReady and his companions to the conclusion that this was a suicide meant to avoid assimilation by the Thing. But then MacReady himself appears to have been assimilated, and he is left out in the snow. While inside, the men's paranoia increasing for obvious reasons, the rest of the group tries to decide if he should be allowed back inside. MacReady solves this problem with dynamite, and soon, while trying to treat what appears to be a heart attack, Dr. Copper's arms are bitten off by a mouth that appears in the middle of the human in question, yet another victim of the Thing. MacReady burns this creature too, and when its head is separated from its body, the head attempts to escape before also being incinerated. This confrontation reveals that the crew's problem is even more dire than they thought. The Thing isn't just one organism, but rather many organisms that can survive even if a part is destroyed. The idea at this point is to test each man's blood with a burning wire, and this plan of action moves forward after Clark, who tries to stab McCready, is killed. Everyone passes the test except for the man that used to be Palmer. Having been caught, the Thing transforms and manages to assimilate yet another member of the crew before both are burned to death. Obviously, with their numbers dwindling, it's easier now for the remaining humans to keep track of each other. Unfortunately, Blair, or what was Blair, has managed to escape the shed and has constructed a kind of flying saucer from scavenged parts around the base. McCready and the others destroy the saucer, but they return to base to find that Childs, who was left behind to stand guard, has disappeared, and their generator has been disabled. With no heat and no way to leave the base, McCready reasons that the Thing plans to hibernate until someone arrives to rescue the stranded men. With only 3 humans, they think, left, the survivors prepare to blow up the base and kill the Thing. Not Blair tries to stop them, as does an even bigger iteration of the Thing, but McCready once again solves his problems with dynamite, though in the end, he's the only man left alive. Childs returns, saying he got lost in the snow, and though both wonder briefly if the other has been assimilated, they're both freezing to death. So at this point, there's no point in interrogating each other's humanity, and the pair share some whiskey as the film ends. When it was first released, this film was not popular with critics. It was panned for its bleak ending and the at times truly disgusting creature effects, which cost about $1.5 million of the film's $15 million budget. As always, practical effects do have a way of standing the test of time when approached with the skill and care you see here. Thankfully, though, being released in 1982 meant that the Thing has enjoyed a lengthy life on video and DVD, and has since been recognized as a cult classic. Personally, I think more movies should give Kurt Russell's character a bunch of dynamite and see what happens. I also love that in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, as Ego the Living Planet, he's essentially doing what the Thing did with more success, up until that film's conclusion. To paraphrase one Arctic researcher, who's part of a group that watches the Thing annually, at first it's funny, but by the end, you don't want to go outside. I give this movie 4 sticks of dynamite out of 5. Our next film this month is Let the Right One In, a vampire film that takes place in Sweden. The film begins in 1982. Oscar, age 12, is often bullied at school, and he dreams of taking revenge. When he meets Ellie, his new next-door neighbor, she tells him they can't be friends, but they soon begin to tap messages to each other in Morse code through the wall their respective apartments share. Oscar lives with his mother, while Ellie lives with a man named Hakan. With Ellie's encouragement, Oscar starts attending an after-school exercise program, the idea being that getting stronger will help him stand up to bullies. While the audience is introduced to Oscar's daily life, we also learn that Hakan has recently committed murder in hopes of obtaining blood for Ellie, who is a vampire. But after nearly being caught, Hakan has to hide the body of Jock, his second victim, by disposing of him in a nearby lake. It's Sweden, so the ice is thick, but there are holes for fishing. Also, apologies for my pronunciation of names here. Though Hakan is seen committing murder, Gosta, the man who spotted him, doesn't report the crime to the police. Hakan's next attempt to find blood for Ellie leads him to the local school, where he traps a boy in a changing room, but then discovers that the boy's friends have returned to search for him. Horrified at the thought of being caught, Hakan throws hydrochloric acid on his own face, and he is taken away without being identified. Later, Ellie finds Hakan at the hospital, and when he asks her to drain him of blood, she does. Hakan then plummets from his window, further concealing his crimes while also protecting Ellie from discovery. After this, Ellie goes to Oscar's apartment, and after a night together, though Ellie explains that she is not a girl, the two agree to go steady. While ice skating during a field trip, Oscar's classmates discover the body of Jock beneath the lake ice. On this same trip, Oscar, fed up with the bullies who won't leave him alone, strikes the group's main aggressor, Connie, leaving his ear bleeding badly. And while Oscar doesn't know much about Ellie at this point in the film, his suspicions are aroused when, after he suggests that they cut their hands and make a blood pact, she licks the blood from his hand before fleeing. Ellie doesn't want to hurt Oscar, but she can't deny her thirst for blood. Ellie, struggling to find blood on her own without attracting attention, attacks a woman named Virginia, but doesn't kill her. After this, Virginia finds that sunlight causes her pain, and when she visits Gosta, the man's cats attack her. By now, Oscar is determined to confront Ellie. She admits that yes, she is a vampire, and while Oscar hates the idea that she must kill to stay alive, Ellie points out that they're alike. How is defending oneself against a bully so different from killing to eat and survive? Neither Oscar or Ellie relishes violence, but existence has made it necessary. This film also acknowledges that in sparing someone, like in the case of Virginia, Ellie isn't exactly letting them go on to recover and lead a normal life again. Instead, when Virginia, in the hospital after the attack by Gosta's cats, asks for the shade to be open a little, the sun hits her, and she bursts into flames. Virginia's boyfriend, Lack, is able to find Ellie's apartment, and when he finds her sleeping in the bathtub, he attempts to kill her before being stopped by Oscar. Ellie wakes up and drains Lack of blood. She and Oscar kiss, but an upstairs neighbor has clearly heard the noise of the confrontation in the bathroom, and Ellie realizes she must make plans to move on again. Staying in one place for long just isn't a safe option for a vampire once they begin to be noticed. She leaves that night, and Oscar understands a bit better that Ellie can't help what she is. Unfortunately for Oscar, Connie the bully has been plotting revenge. The day after Ellie's departure, Oscar returns to his after-school exercise program, which happens to be taking place at the pool. Some of Connie's friends start a fire, and this distracts the teacher supervising things while everyone is evacuated. Meanwhile, Connie's older brother traps Oscar in the pool, threatening to mutilate him unless he can hold his breath for 3 minutes. While Oscar is holding his breath underwater, Ellie arrives and kills all the bullies but one. She tears them apart, and then she and Oscar leave together. Later, on a train, Oscar is traveling with a box. He and Ellie tap the word kiss in Morse code to each other as the film ends. I saw this movie at a time when I would read or watch anything with a vampire involved, and it certainly left a lasting impression. The two young actors who star in this film do a fantastic job. Their compelling performances, combined with a story that focuses on a youthful vampire — Interview with a Vampire has Claudia, but she isn't the main focus of the novel or the film — sets the story apart from the countless vampire films in existence, and leaves viewers with some compelling questions. When did Hakan meet Ellie? Was he as young as Oscar at the time? Will Oscar meet the same fate someday? How long has Ellie been a vampire? If vampires existed, doesn't it stand to reason that they would prefer colder, darker parts of the world? I give this gripping, grisly film 4 corpses out of 5. Our book this month is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. While there have been many movie adaptations of this classic tale, I've yet to see one that frames the story the way the book does. Victor Frankenstein, having fled his home on a ship heading north, is confronted by the creature he created from dead body parts and brought to life with electricity. Now able to speak, the creature reflects on his existence so far and admonishes Victor for creating him and then promptly abandoning him. From this point, the novel follows Victor, first filled with hubris, certain that he can create life, and then horrified by what he has created. But we also hear from the creature. When Victor fled, the creature struggled to learn and communicate with humans, and sometimes reacted violently. Though he is made from human parts, the creature realizes over the course of the novel that they will never accept him. Eventually, he leaves Victor behind, jumping down from the ship onto the ice and disappearing, planning to create a funeral pyre for himself and die by suicide. Over 200 years after its publication, Frankenstein still enjoys a vivid life, or afterlife, in the cultural consciousness. There are at least 2 movies coming this year based on the story, including February's delightfully fun-looking Lisa Frankenstein, directed by Diablo Cody. And if you're looking for an excellent modern retelling of the tale, check out Victor Laval's Destroyer, a graphic novel about race, death, and resurrection. There are many reasons why this story still resonates. In an article for UCLA, author Ann Mellor writes, "It is the myth of modern science that a scientist can create something that could destroy us all." Ann Mellor, by the way, is the author of Mary Shelley, her life, her fiction, her monsters. And that feeling is still with us, whether we are thinking about nuclear bombs, bioterrorism, anthrax, the list goes on. While the experiments have changed, the capacity of scientific intervention in the workings of nature has only increased, so the myth becomes more and more relevant. The result of Shelley's research into and qualms about science took form in her fame monster that starts with a rather benevolent existence, becoming cruel and violent only after he is denied affection and empathy from the world, and his father, Victor Frankenstein. Victor's refusal to make his unnatural son a mate of his own was Shelley's commentary on male fear of female power and female sexuality, Mellor said. Cold weather has a way of clarifying things. When the weather turns dangerously chilly, we're reminded how close to our own mortality we are at all times. Per a 2021 study from The Lancet, for every one death linked to heat, 9 are linked to cold. Add in a supernatural threat, and the sting of ice and snow becomes truly horrifying indeed. Because even if you can come in from out of the cold, there's no telling just what might come in with you. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another installment of Terrifying Trios.